My brain is working on like a third of the speed right now, and yeah.
Welcome to Axiom, where we share, discuss, and practice methods for living a happier, healthier, and more fulfilled life. Today is our second discussion episode where we'll be discussing the subject of free will and determinism and how those contrast. What are the advantages to both views? Why would you maybe want to adopt one view or the other? I'm really excited to just get into exploring this whole thing. Hopefully we'll have a little bit of debate. And yeah, what do you think, Axel?
I think the intro is not going to get any better than that.
Sweet. Well, what do you think about the episode?
I think I'm very excited about this. I would want to say that I came as prepared as I could. We'll see. We'll see if our sleep deprivation
you can't
doesn't
see
get
this
in the way.
from the podcast, but Axel actually has notes, and there's like pages of them. And see, if my handwriting looked like Axel's, I would take notes too. But since my handwriting looks like a platypus that dropped out of pre-K, I'm not trying to display that for anyone. But also, I just don't have as many thoughts as you in general or on this subject.
Oh wow,
So.
great. This is going to be an easy debate. No, just kidding. Yeah. So I'm coming from the point of view of determinism, or you could also call it materialism, or in general, I'm not a believer at all in free will. I'm not even agnostic about it. I feel that I know enough about my reality to state I don't think there is any at all. What would be your position on it?
Well, yeah. So I think if anybody has watched the free will episode that I mostly did myself and collected information from a few other sources, I think I put together almost as good of a case as you can for free will. And I'll actually be the first to say, I think it's a pretty simple case. Like, there's not really that much to it. I don't consider this subject resolved in either direction. I do think it leans toward free will, and to the point where we can take all of the advantages of a deterministic view and still have a free will mentality, language, still live your life basically believing you have free will, and that will, at the end of the day, optimize your happiness. That will maximize your happiness. So one of the things that I want to say starting off is how cool I think it is that we actually get to have this discussion right now because in popular culture, just in society, in movies, what have you, people come across this subject almost like I feel like everyone on the planet almost comes across this subject of, are my choices, how in control of my choices am I really? Because obviously when I pull my hand away from a hot stove or something, I didn't really feel entirely in control of that. It felt pretty instinctual. So how many of my choices does that apply to? Am I entirely a puppet on strings? Or maybe the stance that I take is that even the hand being pulled away from the stove is actually still you, entirely autonomously. It's just such a quick decision you don't even really notice it or remember it. Yeah, that's a little bit of where I'm coming from. I'm sure we can get into a little bit more why we think this is important, but what do you think?
No, I think it's great. At the end of the day, we still have to live our lives. And that's a thing that any kind of, let's say, determinist will tell you at the end of the day. There's even an article by The Atlantic titled "Why There Is No Such Thing as Free Will and Why We Shouldn't Think About It That Much, or Why We Should Pretend That There Is."
Oh, wow.
So it's an interesting take. I'm probably butchering the title, but it's there.
I think I've heard similar things to that. That like it's important that we think we have free will, but you don't. That kind of thing. I'm sure I've seen articles like that.
If it's something that a lot of people think in every human at some point probably thinks about that, at least modern day Homo sapiens, right? We think about it that way. Then it's important to acknowledge that this is a topic that could even be a sacred cow for the vast majority of the population. So
that's interesting. What do you mean by that?
As in, it's very emotionally involved. It's not just something that you talk about. I can imagine myself if I were to dispute the existence of free will in front of my parents. That conversation is not going to happen without arousing some sort of emotional response.
Right.
Mostly worry on their behalf.
Well, and for a lot of people, the concept of free will is tied to a lot of other ideologies that they hold.
Yes.
Especially in a lot of religions, it's such an integral part of the whole thing that to question the existence of that very important part of it is to essentially question the whole thing and, what would you say, threaten breaking down the whole thing, right?
It also outside of religions. In the determinism conversations, we love to, attack their religious side, and I do believe of it as a more religious term. However, in a secular society, you're still doing the one thing that makes the idea of free will exist in the hearts of anybody, which is you're trying to discern culpability. If something happens, which is negative, if something good happens, you're trying to either bring praise or bring punishment.
Yeah, where to put the blame, basically. What part of this is responsible, right?
Yeah. If we were to define, I don't know how I could possibly define free will. I almost want to put that burden on the people who believe in it.
Sure,
yeah. Exactly.
I think I've got a pretty good working definition.
Oh, I would love to hear it.
So the ability to start causal chains.
Okay.
Like autonomously.
Yeah. Autonomously start causal chains.
Yeah, and you might even say, based off of perception or something, based off of intentionality. But the autonomous causal chain concept is something like really has a beginning, square one, or chain number one, link number one. That's kind of the core of the idea. Because kind of core to the idea of determinism is that doesn't really exist, right? Like, you're not autonomously initiating some causal chain. And then free will, conversely, is yes, you are initiating autonomously on your own, up to you, a causal chain.
Independent of what came before.
Yeah, to a degree, independent. I say autonomous. Obviously, if you move your hand away from a fire, to some degree, the fire was responsible for the fact that your hand moved, right?
Yeah.
So we can get into what that distinction really is, but I think the word independent or autonomous would still be pretty appropriate to describe my definition. So.
Yeah. But then we're talking, you said a point, which is at least in the way in which it is perceived. So, for example, when I don't believe in free will, you could argue, do you believe in freedom in general, right? I'm not a slave being shackled to a master right now. And if I was, I would be desiring a different state of life in which I could say, now I have freedom. Freedom of what exactly? And I think that perceived freedom is supremely important for a person's health. That is absolutely true.
Perceived freedom.
Yeah. Whenever you at least feel that, hey, I have autonomy, I have control, I feel that is very important. Just because I could stand on a philosophical position that is like, well, freedom doesn't actually exist, that doesn't mean that I don't acknowledge the feelings of a human to at least feel.
Well, right, and you're kind of echoing the same point as like that Atlantic title, right? That like the importance of the perception is important, right?
Yes, yeah. I think it's very important.
Interesting. I am super interested in that possible conclusion, even from a deterministic point of view, because I see that as being where some of the most potential for common ground is, right?
Yeah.
It's like, we can say theoretically what's behind this wall, it could be this, could be that, but if we can maximize our happiness by agreeing on thinking about it this way,
yes,
can we solve that question of what's behind the wall at a later time or something? So I'm super interested in that. Axel, can you get into a little bit more why you think this conversation is important, how you see it handled in society, maybe a little bit more of your backstory, why you came to the deterministic view?
Starting with the backstory, it was mostly a religious background that everyone could label this religion as a cult. I think that is good to call it that way. So, but it follows the same premise of almost every religion. There is an omnipotent, omniscient being that created you and is going to judge you based on your decisions.
Sorry, real quick. When you said it follows the premise of basically every religion, what was the it you were talking about?
The premise of my religion. The premise of my religion follows the premise of many other religions. Gotcha. There's one ultimate judger. Not all religions. I'm ignorant about all the religions, but most religions, especially Abrahamic Christian religions, there's one guy who's judging everybody. He is discerning culpability on everyone based on your actions and your thoughts. After going through my deconstruction process and eventually reading just a book on fundamental neuroscience, and when I say that, just literally the first few chapters, when you're getting the basics of how thoughts are formed, every thought from the most intimate to that basic reaction from the hot stove, it follows a sequence of events, and if anything in that series of events changes, then the thought changes and your actions change. That still put me in a more agnostic position about free will, but what it made me feel was that, hey, I don't think that you can discern culpability on people, especially if you created them, and punish them as a consequence. That seemed like insane. Now, as an atheist person, as a more secular person, I still live in a civilization where we still need to discern culpability. We still need to punish for crimes, deter violations, We also feel the need to reward behavior.
Well, and if I can, you're going straight to one of the most often cited reasons why this is important, because people want to, I think, refine their treatment of how to punish things.
Yes.
Yes, there are other applications of this concept that are important, like people say, oh, why would I even get out of bed in the morning if I thought everything was determined or something?
Yes.
So that's one application. But I don't think that one is typically as big of a concern as what you're talking about right now, which is like, hey, how do we structure the criminal justice system under a deterministic view versus like a free will view, right?
Yes. There was a book called The Science of Sin that I don't know how you feel about recommending books, but I recommend it to everybody.
Do whatever you want.
In one of the chapters, in the chapter about lust, and we don't need to get into detail about the crime, one of the things that really put an impression on me was the story of a man who, in his later years, he started developing, let's just call it really bad desires, and started making the lives of people around him hell, to the point that they had to take him to court. And eventually they found out.
Yes, yeah. I think this is a really famous story, actually. But continue.
He had a brain tumor that was causing this behavior that was unprecedented otherwise. Sure enough, the removal of the brain tumor made the whole behavior change.
Right.
Sure, anyone could say, well, that is an exceptional case, but I'm thinking, like, where is the line where we say this is proper function or not? There's plenty of people out there without that brain tumor that will behave that way. So it's like, imagine if we normally think about things like the cure for things for like deviance. If you have any kind of sexual orientation that is considered deviant because it causes suffering, or you have a propensity towards violence, or whatever it is, like, maybe we can find something that prevents violations, or whenever you actually act on these feelings, we can find something that helps out and removes those thoughts from you, basically removes that impetus that you have to do those bad things. For me, the greatest value in the exploration of free will is found in behavioral science, which is preventive measures for everything that we're talking about. That for me is the most important thing.
I think behavioral science is like super valuable, even from a free will point of view. I think in that story, so they removed the tumor, and then his behaviors went away, and then it even grew back.
And the behaviors came back.
Which is, that's a really crazy story. And I'm not saying it's crazy in that it's actually exceptional. I hadn't really heard, that's a common response as people go, oh, well, that's, that's a exceptional case. We don't really need to regard it or something. I would think absolutely not. No, it like it's a very good example of how our, let's say, external world can pressure our internal world. Yeah. And so that would probably be the kind of way a free will person would phrase this, that like external sensations, stimuli can very obviously pressure the feelings you're receiving. And it's a very valuable case study for that reason too. So anyways, I didn't want to cut you off if you're still going with any kind of background on this subject.
I think that's it for the background of where I'm coming from in it. I mean, I think it's suffice to say that I don't feel emotionally distraught by the idea that I don't have free will, but that depends from individual to individual. And what I personally feel is that, okay, if we're not talking about free will, if we're acting as a society, acknowledging that we all have it, what I would like to mix in with that is what civilization is kind of already doing. In the zeitgeist, especially in the 2010s, I think, there's been a change towards acknowledging not just psychiatric conditions, but mental health in general. Mm-hmm. And I think that is super important. Mm-hmm. And I think that the more society acknowledges any kind of mental syndrome that we have, and knowing how to, I say deal with it, but also it's like, let's just learn where to place this in a civilization, which its main premise is let's not cause suffering on one another. Then what can we do about the whole brain thing, basically? Mm-hmm. You know,
right.
I think maybe that's the most important thing. Mm-hmm. In this, I feel that the immaterial approach towards the potential that a person has is very harmful for the most part, or at least
can you say that again? You think
the immaterial approach for a human thinking, for example, no matter how depressed you are, you can always find the willpower to fight it, almost as if willpower was this magical thing that you just have to think about.
You're saying that's the free will kind of perspective, or
I'm not saying that people who are intentionally thinking philosophically about free will take that position. I don't think they do. But the layman, the average person, mm-hmm. what they consider is, hey, if you're having a hard time in life, 99% of the process is going to be you mm-hmm. toughing it out, fighting mm-hmm. through it, and finding the willpower to change. Mm-hmm. Hey, you have a temptation to cheat on your wife,
right.
You can change
that.
So
if both of our camps are trying to optimize happiness, we can accidentally misrecommend, give bad recommendations for how to achieve that, right? So maybe if someone is putting too much onus on personal achievement, you're actually still causing suffering, when you should tell the guy, for instance, I guess we might be coming back to the example of the hand in the stove. Mm-hmm. If the free will person, someone in my camp, is telling the guy, oh, just, toughen up, ignore the pain or something. This is mostly up to you that you're feeling this discomfort. That might be causing them more suffering than necessary, versus if you say, no, look, it's a fire there. Look at the obvious things causing this sensation. If we just remove the hand, it's not a you thing. It's this situation. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's still about finding the most direct route to happiness. And I'll start with accepting some responsibility for people on my end that might put too much responsibility on the person rather than the circumstance, and causing more suffering as a result.
Yeah. And I guess the risk that is involved in the opposite, which is considering the brain as this completely material machine. I mean, that's how I consider it also. You could say that one of the risks is in that now we have no valuable emotions that we care about, and all we care about is the optimal results that our brain can give us, almost as if the brain was a manufacturer of goods and services, and that's it.
Can you explain that?
Yeah. So, for example, if I am a corporate leader and I'm like, man, I want more people to become Amazon workers, and I want to go to work, etc. Like, their misery and their whatever they're feeling makes them non-efficient workers. what if there is a way observing the brain purely as a material thing and just acknowledging emotions as these inconveniences that appear in the way of pragmatism? Like, I can maybe just, let's say, hypothetically, there's a magic pill that I can make everyone take that makes them feel pure bliss whenever they're working at Amazon, you know?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, okay. Would you not say this is kind of what we do a lot?
Yes.
Maybe a lot of medicine, I think, from my perspective, is first off, a statement of how much profound knowledge we have about the brain, how much we know about the brain, which is an impressive amount, that we can take a pill and it releases serotonin, dopamine, whatever. But also potentially a deep misdiagnosis, right? Mm-hmm. Where we think something is a simple solution, and then we also kind of become over-reliant on that as the solution and fail to consider, let's say, more natural alternatives. I don't know if that's how you'd say that.
That's definitely, I think, a whole other topic when it comes to medicine.
Well, yeah, right. Sure. Which is, I just think that's an application of what you're saying.
Yeah. Because medicine currently exists, let's say in the US, medicine exists so that you become functional. Functional implies functional for or healthy for.
Yeah. And yeah, I'm not trying to get into the subject of medicine versus like natural anything. But I was thinking that was an example of what you were describing.
It is. It really is. What I'm the hypothetical that I'm talking about is like a one-dimensional caricature of what we are doing as a society at large. Because we all want to be healthier. Healthier for what? We want to be healthier for a 40-hour work week and for reproductive purposes, right? Yeah. So it's like, I mean, it's interesting that we can find the pills or medicine that actually work for that. We can adjust the behavior, relatively speaking, so that we can become, better adjusted. But that is definitely a whole thing. But that is to me the dark side of that, is that now you observe the brain not as the host of an individual experience, but now it's just, what can we get from it? This person is not behaving how we want it to behave. How can we change it? You know?
Yeah. And kind of veering away from that Atlantic title of like fostering a perception of autonomy and trying to figure out how to drive and direct that versus how can I manufacture a perfect brain to maximize the output. I do want to get into why I have arrived on the free will side a little bit. So I also grew up in a religious household, and funny enough, if anyone is familiar with I think it's called Arminian it's Arminian versus Calvinistic divide within evangelical Christianity. You kind of grow up familiar with the idea that God either knows what actions you're going to take or he doesn't. And so the problem of God knowing the actions you're going to take makes it really sound like all of your choices are predetermined. Like all of the outcomes to everything are already decided ahead of time. And then the problem with God not knowing something you're going to do makes God not all-knowing. So interestingly, in these camps, you grow up kind of very aware of this subject. And I always took the more free will side. One of the last churches that I attended before leaving religion altogether was actually a Calvinistic church, which is the one that believes everything is predetermined. I'm not sure if they would phrase it that way, but really most people looking at the belief, and myself included, would look at their beliefs and say, that's determinism. But I think the common thread I've been following this whole time might have started in my religion, which was the Church of Christ, by the way, which always took the Arminian view, the more free will view. And maybe that instilled a deep intuition that free will is something that you have. I never really felt like that was exclusively related to doctrine. Just growing up in that culture, you never heard the idea of determinism in that culture. You never heard the idea of determinism seriously considered. It wasn't until you start coming of age and start deciding what kind of church you're supposed to go to that you start thinking about free will versus determinism. So I grew up basically thinking, oh yeah, free will. Let's see. And so I could chalk it up to that upbringing that instilled a deep intuition that free will is something that we have. But even after leaving religion, it hasn't ever gone away. And I think it's really the golden thread, the common thread throughout considering this subject, whenever I've come across it, that as compelling of a case as the deterministic side has always made, and sometimes I want to say that the deterministic side even usually comes out on top in these discussions. But I say usually because not always. And it's rare for the free will side to have competent articulation. I think because a lot of it is rooted in instinct. We start off in this life kind of believing we have autonomous action, believing you have free will and stuff. And then it's kind of a more mature idea to think, well, what if that's not the case? To notice you pulling your hand away from a fire and thinking, well, that was so just instinctual. What if all of my choices are really just subconscious, not up to me, like that? And I think that's where the split usually happens. You usually grow up, let's say, with the more childish understanding that you have autonomous, you can autonomously start causal chains, right? You have autonomous control of your actions. And then some information comes along that really makes it look like all of this is determined. I think a lot of people take that path, and there's a lot of value to be found on that path. But still keeping with that base intuition, that base question of why does it feel like you have free will? I'm more than willing, actually, to grant, okay, let's say free will is absolutely true. What is this thing that feels like it has autonomous control? And I think that, let's totally grant the deterministic view. I think that question is close to one of the most valuable things we can pursue. It happens to be that I think with really thorough examination of all the information that the deterministic side puts forward, and then really thinking about it and really thinking about if it really proves what it seems like it proves, I think actually the intuitive, common sense view that you do have autonomous control of your actions actually wins out. But I'll say that it takes a lot of thought to think of a way that the deterministic argument could not be right. I would say the deterministic side really feels compelling, at least initially. If I had been convinced over to the deterministic side at one point, I would still have that lingering question of like, what is this thing that feels like free will, right? And I think most determinists also have that question. It's a little bit of a pebble in the shoe of determinism of like, what is this thing that feels like consciousness, that, feels like material independent thoughts or something? Like, I'm not saying these are the best words for this, but a determinist is usually intrigued by that question. And they may think the answer lies in neurons, right? But they're still generally very intrigued by that question. Yeah, I'm used to being the outlier in secular spaces about this. I have always found determinism valuable for certain things, because it never gives up the search of what else could be causing something. It's a kind of beautiful idea that the whole universe could be so orderly as to be entirely self-caused, let's say. There aren't independent agents creating autonomous causal chains within it. It's like everything could have an equation. That's really beautiful, and it seems to be that we continue finding more of these causal responsible factors like the tumor in the brain that that indicate that it is really valuable to continue learning more about the natural pressures on our decisions. That said, even with all that information, I have found not only the free will side to be the most compelling, but to be the healthiest and happiest view. And it makes me really happy that both of those are true. That not only do I think it's the healthiest and happiest view, and almost enough so to agree with that Atlantic article that, or whatever article, and ones that I've seen that say, even if determinism is true, we kind of need to foster a sense of autonomy or sense of, autonomy. Not only do I believe it from the pragmatic point of view, I think it's just absolutely true. And one of the coolest things I think about that is it is the common sense view. It kind of doesn't even need any explanation. Your feeling of autonomy is actually accurate. Now, you also have the feelings of pressure, things pressuring your decisions. And so we need to be aware of the things that are pressuring our decisions also. But that kind of common sense perspective you have of having control over your actions, or having, let's say, ultimate control, maybe not 100% control, but majority share or something, that kind of common sense view feels like it harmonizes the most.
There's a lot of emphasis in that view, if I'm understanding it correctly, that there's a lot of value in that intuitive notion. Sure, hard sciences can explain whatever phenomenon in the mind is going on, but ultimately we are experiencing anything that we're trying to measure. What is that? Where does this experience come from? Like, yeah, it's undeniable that we're all experiencing it.
What is this thing we call experience? Yeah. And like, if we believe that some material things are not capable of that experience, a rock or something, then really what is the difference? And we can say that, well, those things don't have brains and these things do have brains. But the difference that we're trying to describe is really not brain. It's experience,
In the philosophical, thought. I think philosophically that's one, I think it's an ontological idea known as qualia.
I think I've heard of this like once.
It's a fascinating one, and even amongst secular friends, it's a difficult one to describe. It's like, sure, light frequencies can hit your eyes, and neuroreceptors can transform that energy in neurotransmitters run and put it in your occipital lobe. It is not a fact that you should see color. You know what I mean? It doesn't follow that experience should be something in there.
Experience.
What is it about? I think we've talked about this before, but what is it about an arbitrary assembly of atoms that all of a sudden results in this experience?
Yeah, this thing we call experience and perception and really feeling emotion, and then the experience of being able to do autonomous actions.
Yeah, and I definitely want to address that in a second, but there was the idea of intuition. I think you may also see the value in why someone leaning towards determinism we really don't value common intuition. And when I say value, it doesn't mean that we don't respect it. Many intuitive ideas just give us a good clue that something is going on. Our intuition, I think our intuition is valuable, but the reason we don't value it as an accurate measuring tool for reality, because it is not the common denominator across accurate conclusions that we can draw about the world around us. For just an example that everyone will bring up is, it was intuitively obvious that the sun and the stars spun around the earth, and not the other way around. For thousands of years, this was the most... You kind of had to be a little bit crazy to be like, no, it's the complete opposite, right? And it took many years until we proved that to be wrong, and then the entire intuitive knowledge about the solar system changed. But I mean,
that's a good example.
It's a dramatic change, and I personally feel that we're witnessing the transition from that intuitive notion of, I feel that I have not only experience but free will, but also, hey man, our free will is very limited.
Or the earth is flat kind of example.
Right, well, that is a regression caused, I think, primarily by political problems. But in the realm of free will, I think we see more of, people are acknowledging more and more, we have our limits, and it's okay that we accept those limits. There are certain things you cannot do anything about. We start with psychiatric diagnosis, right? Like, oh, this person has schizophrenia. I cannot just convince them to, hey, no, don't listen to the voices in your head. Just willpower your way through that. Like, there's obviously something physiologically going on with this person that we can only address medicinally, right? And there is a point where in the state of our minds where like, this is quote unquote normal, which we can only intuitively discern. Hey, I feel that I'm having these coherent thoughts. My friends tell me that I think okay, right? So I think that I'm in the healthy spectrum of mind. And it's something that I basically don't believe in. I don't believe that my current mental state or the mental state of anyone is quote unquote finished or ideal, in the sense that just because, I mean, we are living the society that we can manage, but that's about it. If we knew what we're missing out on, we would probably realize how limited this cognitive ability is. And another thing that I have to disagree with, I don't think that experience is intuitive as it is, and also as a causal as it seems to be. Like, experience is still here, and it's not a fact that the crashing of all these marbles leads to experiencing the crashing of the marbles, right? It doesn't seem acausal at all to me, because as mystical or as metaphysical as my experience seems, there is a one-to-one correlation with whatever happens physically to it. There is so much about, let's call it the external world, that happens that affects my mental state, my conscious thoughts, my desires, my impulses, my inhibitions also. So to me, it's like, well, whatever this is that is going on, I cannot put a finger on it. I can't immediately measure it scientifically yet. Currently, I can only go through my intuition about it, but nothing that I've experienced and nothing that anyone has shown me through the experience of experience tells me this is something beyond what can be explained physically.
So, and I've got a little bit I could say in response to that, but I think we may want to back up a little bit. And why don't we talk about why this subject even seems important to view from both of our perspectives. So do you see in society us, blaming people too much, too directly?
I think that there are the portion of people who are becoming more forgiving about people's conditions, whatever they may be, is becoming larger. But I still think, maybe this is just my anecdotal experience, but I still think, for example, we have toxic narratives about, if you're born poor, you should fight your way to the top. Okay. Like, that should be on you. It's not an excuse if you're born in a dangerous neighborhood.
Like, if you end up poor, it's totally on you.
It's on you.
That's kind of
and if you're born poor, sure, we feel a little bit bad for your circumstances. It's going to be hard, but ultimately you're still to blame if you become the victim of those circumstances or the end result of those circumstances. In those kinds of scenarios, we feel that being a victim is almost like a choice, or that certain amounts of suffering are also choices, that you can ultimately fight them and prove that you can overcome them. And I feel in society, you know, we say that because, well, we really don't have any other way currently. We still don't have the technological and medicinal advances needed to, let's say, help everybody out. So we kind of just have to tough it out. And I think that toughen it out is like the number one way to go through life right now, according to everybody. And I think, man, like I think hopefully we'll get to a point where that is no longer an acceptable thought. And
that we can diagnose everything. We can figure out why you made any decision that you made, basically. That's a super romantic idea to me. Like that's a ideal idea to me. It's something that we should work toward, but hand in hand with the knowledge that ultimately your choices are up to you. I think it's always going to be valuable to try to understand the pressures impacting someone's decisions. And essentially, to the degree that that information is accessible, of course we need to pursue it and understand it better. And I think there even is infinite information in that category. There's an infinite amount of factors that are impacting your decisions that you don't notice. And so even from a free will perspective that believes that ultimately the responsibility does lie with a person for their actions, it's still going to be super valuable to continue learning about the pressures they were under while making that decision. So
yeah, here's an interesting one. Like, I think that the need for justice, let's say punitive actions against people who have violated you in some way, is that's a need. Like, that's one of our needs.
Okay, and in our last discussion, you said something about really not liking, I think, the death penalty. Is this kind of related to that?
It's interesting. So I respect the death penalty as an emotional response. If someone does something to me that is awful, the death penalty...
It's understandable that you want to kind of inflict that back in some way.
It's also understandable that if I can find peace in it, like, to me, it's just not a horrible thing to do a death penalty on someone who just went through an atrocity by the perceivable actions of another person. I get it. It's gonna happen. I'm not too even vocal about that because I put myself in the position of the victim, and I feel that they need some kind of justice. I just like we acknowledge biological needs like eating or any other needs. I feel that justice is one of those things where you feel that that you need some kind of compensation for the thing that happened to you.
Mm-hmm. Well, and if I can, I'm interested to hear you distinguish between the death penalty and kind of all other types of, you said punitive action or negative reinforcement. Because to me, it's just it's toward that end of the spectrum. It's not even the end of that spectrum, but it's toward that end of the spectrum, and it's not like substantially different from other punishments. And so I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on.
Yeah. So basically, if somebody punches me, and I feel that I am entitled to punch them back, right? Just as an example, violation, punitive action. I think that's purely like an emotional thing, but I acknowledge emotions to be pretty important.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, like, still most of the goal, you would say, from a deterministic point of view, is an emotion, and that emotion is happiness.
Yeah. So if we're trying to aim towards happiness, towards lack of suffering, basically, I think that, sure, we respect the victim's rights to punch back. But just as importantly, I think that in the background, while the punching is happening, we need to understand, why did the initial offender do that, and how can we prevent it? There's a way to prevent that first punch from happening. how can we attack that problem? That's what I feel is like the most important thing. Sure.
So it's kind of a fallback solution to punish someone directly, right?
Yeah.
Because of our limited information about what is causing someone's. And see, this is where I think we're kind of cutting to the end of finding common ground.
Yeah.
Because until we have that information, I think we're going to have to kind of do some form of direct punishment, even if we're maybe not saying you're responsible for this. We're at least going to have to contain this kind of behavior, you know?
Yeah.
Am I?
Yeah, and especially if we label punishment as like it's also a deterrent to stop other offenders from.
Yeah. What do you think about that?
That's
really interesting.
I am not the expert at all to know.
Neither of us are.
Yeah.
This podcast is not about being experts.
Yeah. To accepting a perfect premise where, punching the person back after they punch you deters 10 other people in the room who are going to punch you. It's like accepting it's like, okay, great. Yeah, then punch back. Do the punitive action. If it doesn't
but don't we know kind of like intuitively like that it works like that? Like,
we assume it.
Like if I'm picking a fight with the big guy at the bar and then he just decks me, we all know that's gonna, let's say, solve the situation and nobody else is gonna pick a fight with him for a while.
Yeah.
So from your perspective, in any sense, did that work? Was that a good solution, even if not like an optimal solution, for the big guy to deck me to kind of resolve the situation?
Yeah, I mean, that's behavioral science 101. You're gonna, when you deter behavior, behavior's gonna change, right?
I think we're about to be frustrated by how much we agree.
It's probable. I think philosophically is where we mostly disagree. But I think also we can both appreciate a civilization where, okay, we have limits. We also all respect at least the perception of agency. So how can we live a life where we're not violating each other's spaces, when we're not making each other suffer? And even me saying that, how can we control our actions so that other people don't suffer, implies a level of perceived free will. It implies an acceptance of, okay, even me as a materialist, even though I don't believe in free will at all, I also understand, or my mind understands the way I perceive it. It's like, I know I don't want to do anything bad to anybody. I acknowledge the suffering of others as a real thing in the world. And I guess I'm empathetic enough to know I don't want to have anything to do with anybody's pain at all, ever. So it's like, that's my prerogative. That's what I want to do. I don't know what the best way to go about it is, but it's like, it's interesting that I personally feel that my materialist viewpoint has aided me in doing that.
I think I know what you're describing too. There is a way that it gets applied that just fosters so much more understanding and getting along with the other person, I think, because you're just trying to understand as much as you can about the other person's the factors that determine their choices.
You know, I'll tell you, the first time that I saw this new approach to life like change things for the better for me was in my familial relationships. You know, in my family, not understanding where we all come from, it's a constant battle of, now I'm feeling this as a result of that. Now I'm going to lash back, and I'm creating a constant loop of something. Now, what I'm saying is probably something that anybody who purchased a self-help book things like, okay, you just found the longer version of what we've all tried to work in family relationships. For me, acknowledging that, you know, the cause and effect rule of our emotions and our actions, you know, helped me a lot to understand, let's say, my family members, not as people who were using a tremendous power of will to offend me, to make me angry, but rather understanding it all as like, it's almost like we're in a system, we're all gears in the system, and if I'm the one that is aware of it, let's try changing this thing and see what results I get out of it. That helped me a lot, because I'm never only seeing this person as an infinite box of intention that is like dense with feeling and like emotion or whatever.
That's almost exactly how I would describe people.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like
you are an infinite box of intention.
Yeah, so it feels more significant if that infinite box of intention is doing anything to you to make you angry.
Yeah.
But if you don't see it that way, it's like, okay, there were a bunch of preceding causes for that person to do this thing to me. There's probably many things that we can change about this equation. Like you said, it's kind of viewed very formulaically. There's many things that we can change about this equation to change the results. And it's incredible. It's helped me at work. That approach has helped me a lot. You know, it's a more pragmatic application of that the deterministic view. But I would say, going to the topic of the importance of this conversation, I think it's like it helps a lot in being preventive. I think it's one of the most important things that we can do. And second is also, how do you stop more tragedy from happening when you understand where everybody's coming from? You know, from the intrapersonal level here down at a community to even higher levels of like how we deal with civilizations in general. I think that can be the tremendously good intuition. To give an example, it's I always give this example. If you're at the grocery store and somebody does something rude to you, many reasons to get angry. How dare they? You know, am I letting myself be stepped over like a floor mat? You know, and all of a sudden someone tells you, hey, this person suffers from XYZ mental syndrome, whatever it is. It's been diagnosed. Your entire attitude towards this person changes dramatically.
Right.
It's no longer, am I going to let myself be stepped over? It's rather, it's like, well, this person is obviously not functioning.
Same as the tumor in the brain. It's like, I am misprescribing the responsibility, misdiagnosing what's going on here if I don't see the fire that the person pulled their hand away from, the tumor in their brain causing them to do bad things, or the mental condition they have in the grocery store.
Right. Their view of whatever's going on may be so dramatically different. And I think now, more than ever, we are reaching a state in society where we are becoming more intuitively aware of that.
I agree with that.
Yeah, before you could have had just an asshole of a partner, a boyfriend or whoever that was just terrible. Nowadays, it's amazing how many people end their relationship with, I don't know what was wrong with that person. Probably, you know, not to insult people with those conditions. Like, I've heard more and more, it's like, I think this person had BPD, or maybe they're bipolar, or maybe they have narcissism disorder, which is it's an actual diagnosable condition. Whatever it is, we have an entire classification for people. And these classifications all carry the implication of they could get help and change that permanently, which I don't think ever before in society as a species we've ever had that intuitive conclusion, you know?
Yeah, and if I can say, I once again agree with like so much of what you're saying, that I think we are correctly drawing more of our attention to that 49%, I would say,
right,
of the pressures that are affecting our decisions. And the place I'll disagree is I think some of that has come at a loss of correctly saying you yourself had the ability to choose otherwise. So it's also an extrapolation of personal experience. In my own personal experience, what is that thing not only that feels like it has the ability to create autonomous causal chains, but what is this other thing that feels like I made the wrong decision, that I knew a better route for everyone, and I chose a different one? That is what I think we're pointing out a lot of the time on the free will side, because whether or not that's like a real thing, right? Like whether or not that's a mistaken perception, it's a thing. We feel guilty about a choice, and we think about our past choice, and we go, we ascribe guilt to ourselves.
Yeah.
We say, I knew I shouldn't have done that.
Regret.
I knew. Yeah, and I'm trying to paint the picture of two tracks. You're at the branch point for two tracks.
and you remember that point in the track where it split, where you said, I'm gonna go this way, but I envisioned before I chose to go left that, oh man, I should have gone right, or I should have gone left, but I went right. So we have that phenomenon too, not just the phenomenon of feeling like you have autonomy, right? But the feeling of sometimes it feels like I can intentionally choose the wrong track. So that's another thing that would kind of be a pebble in my shoe, even if I said I was wearing a deterministic shoe. I would say, what is that? That we have some kind of deeper intuition maybe that kind of is telling us the right path. That's kind of our common sense, I would say. That's our real nature or something. And I do think in the religious view, a lot of the time what the religions are trying to articulate is that track that you kind of felt like you should have done, oh, that was God or something. The true nature, let's say. I think from a deterministic view, you can even theoretically identify this. Say, at one point, our microscopes or whatever we're looking at brains with, some kind of, was that kind of brain scan that not
fMRI?
fMRIs, those kinds of things get good enough where we can say, oh, there it is. There's that hidden knowledge track, and then there's that track that we found. Well, that's what we're really aiming for, is a really good understanding of that. Like, I would maybe say, and I'm just coming up with this now, but the true nature track or something, or the better nature, something which actually leads to happiness more directly. We seem to have the ability, well, let's just say we sometimes think we have the ability, we generally think we have the ability to not choose that track. So I think it's an extrapolation of that experience that then we look at other people and we see a choice they make and we go, did you just do the same thing that I do sometimes? In religion, it is called sin. And I don't like all the baggage that religions put on it, but the core phenomenon itself still seems to exist even without religion, of essentially ascribing malintent, right? Like you were informed enough to know a better route than what you took. And so until I come across some information that really indicates, oh, you were under significant pressures that made you choose that, it's going to seem like the same thing that I do in my own brain. And I'm going to think, were you doing that too?
Right.
And I think that is
projection.
It's projection. It's extrapolation. It's assumption. We do it all the time to survive. Until we know everything about the universe, then we'll have to kind of extrapolate with all sorts of things.
It almost sounds like, man, if there is no free will, why do we feel regret? Not to be reductive, but it almost sounds like
if there is no free will, why do we feel regret? Yeah, kind of. Now, I feel like I could imagine there being regret even if it's all one track. So say we don't have free will and all of you don't make choices. I feel like you could still theoretically look back and say, it sucks that I made that choice. I'm not sure that's not quite what I'm describing, of like looking back and saying, I knew there was a better track to get on. But maybe they're close enough that the distinction isn't super important. But
I think, I would have to beg to say this intuition of regret, or man, this was the wrong thing to do. And also you accept it as, I was competent enough. I was sober and aware enough. I am in a mental state that I accept as this is competent. This is acceptable to judge. I made the wrong choice. And I think that is the
well, and actually, let me cut in real quick. In my morality video, this is what I point to as the core of what we call bad behavior. Is we notice that we're capable of lying to ourselves. And so we notice we're capable of doing that. And so I'm pretty sure that is like the core
phenomenon, whether determined or not. But I think that's what we're pointing to in other people too. I'm sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, no. Away from pragmatism, because I think pragmatically we're on the same page.
We're very close, yeah.
Because I'm gonna get mad at the same things, even if I believe in determinism. Yeah, that's just me being a person experiencing. But outside of that, I feel that sense, that intuitive sense of we were at the right mental capacity, wherever that is, we made the wrong choice. I'm gonna feel bad about it, or I'm gonna feel like I have an emotional reaction to it. For me, that may be also not having all the factors in a rather super complex system that you have alluded before with the pressure thing. Super complex system that needs to be dissected and studied so that you get different results. If you have ever worked in any kind of place that is accident prone, a place where they manufacture things, a factory of any sort.
That's where I work in.
Oh, okay. You're going to when you run into an accident, you're always doing analysis. Sure, we can blame the worker because he showed up, let's say,
right. I'm going to be one of the first people to say the worker is generally one of the last things we should be blaming in this situation, too.
People who have worked, there's a quote from a guy whose name I forgot, but this was literally quoted to me by my OSHA guy in our company, which is, individuals don't fail systems, but systems fail individuals. Meaning that if you're in a situation that is prone to failure, you should expect failure. And insurance claims, cars driving is a system of regret. That's what it is. I shouldn't have been distracted on my phone. I crashed the car. I should have looked twice on my blind spot, And there is fatalities involved. And insurance companies, the way they look at this is kind of fascinating, is you should expect a certain amount of accidents every year from people in a certain age range or even gender, like males are more accident prone than women. That is some very interesting data in a system that at an individual experience, it feels like you can have a narrative where you can regret so much. It's like, I shouldn't have done that. What's wrong with me, etc. From the most atrocious stuff like drunk driving to more menial stuff like a bumper-to-bumper thing where you were just distracted or something happened that you consider it negligence on your part. I mean, we send people to jail for manslaughter.
Well, yeah, and I think there you just got onto when you said negligence on our part. It's like, man, there is something super fascinating happening there where, like, even from a free will point of view, this is still a pebble in my shoe. How is it that we look back on our actions and think, fuck, I knew I should have gotten the brakes changed last month because now this happened to me probably 5 months ago. I bumper to bumpered someone and I thought, fuck, I should have gotten my brakes changed.
Yeah. Why didn't I? I have to admit that
in that situation though, I didn't actually feel regret because the person in front of me, I think it was a bit of a dual problem, and the crash probably would have happened anyways because they were in an automatic braking car that braked like inhumanly fast because of the car in front of them that braked fast. And so the car in front of me that I hit did automatic brakes at like a very jolty point. And so I didn't end up really feeling much regret because I was like, damn it. If it wasn't, I'm pretty sure if it wasn't an automatic brake system in that car, that it would have had a slower slowdown or I would have had more time to react. Anyways, that's why I didn't have regret in that case.
This is a perfect example. Cars were actually, traffic in general were one of the reasons why I stopped believing in free will. As funny as that sounds.
Do you get road rage?
Not as much.
I don't really get it either.
Not as much. Even in our insane hellscape of a city. Maybe not as bad as LA.
Well, I grew up in it. So
yeah, I mean,
I think people get road rage at me.
I mean, I'm flabbergasted by some of the things that the drivers are doing, but in any system, even assuming two perfectly sober people, and let's say you did everything that you were supposed to do, they did everything they were supposed to do. Once you get into a crash, what I'm feeling nobody is looking at is you are not blaming the text message that person got at a certain time of the day that made them delay for a couple of extra seconds in the doorway to their way to wherever they were going to go. You're not blaming the child that cried extra. You're not blaming all the enormous amount of circumstances that led to that one car being right in front of you at that point in time. You are also not taking into consideration everything that happened throughout your day, the extra 5 minutes in your shower, or even taking an even faster shower. So many things happen for those two cars to be right there at that time. Mm-hmm. Other distracted drivers probably also caused that chain reaction of events that led to that. That if we could just like pinpoint where they are, you could even blame manslaughter accidents on the
somebody else who
the faults of like, hey, there was this distracted driver who caused you to slow down for a couple of minutes more, and then this person, went over here. It's like,
I will say it's wild to me. This is a total other subject, but it's wild to me that like manslaughter is a crime. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like by definition you had nothing to do with it. Like by definition you're not responsible for this. Unless you say you are responsible for it and it's some kind of negligence, in which case, so
that's what manslaughter is. As a society, we're saying you should have paid more attention on that vehicle. You were the one driving it. You were the one in control. But this is your fault.
Okay, so let's say it was something like and now we're on a tangent, but whatever. Yeah. Say we're on the case of my accident, but let's say it killed somebody in that car. To put it in a nutshell, I don't think I should be responsible in that case for killing someone, even though I was negligent about the brakes. Because while that is a tragic result, you really can't hold someone responsible for knowing to change their brakes because it could result in a death. For every kind of action they make. Like, don't spend 5 more minutes in the shower this morning, because if you're in any kind of rush, somebody could die because of that. I don't think you can hold someone responsible for that kind of forward thinking, And that's why I see manslaughter but that's obviously kind of more of a tangent than we're probably trying to go on. But
it is very relevant, I feel. Okay. Because if you go to the court and we're like, hey, Ryan, you obviously didn't intend it, but we're still saying it's your responsibility, right? Mm-hmm. We're saying that you should have known better. You could have known better. There's so many things you could have done better. You didn't do them. Obviously, you weren't out there.
How could you have known that someone was gonna die?
Obviously,
I feel like this is inherent to the definition of manslaughter, that you can't be blamed for the death.
From a determinist viewpoint, that is my entire question about almost everything.
Right. Yeah, and I realize you're saying that like everything is basically manslaughter because it's not up to you. But I'm acknowledging in the case of manslaughter that you should have known, or I should have known, to change my brakes at least. I shouldn't be.
But when you didn't change your brakes, you weren't like, I'm gonna kill this person, in this accident.
See. This is really integral to the way I see the world. We do have the autonomous ability to choose a bad track. And it's weird that we do that. Mm-hmm. I want to put some more thought into why that occurs. Maybe is that serving some kind of a purpose?
And the materialist explanation doesn't suffice to you, I take it.
Well, to me it just hasn't. It hasn't gotten to the point where it can explain what that is. Theoretically, it might someday. Right. I just don't have confidence that it will.
Yeah. For almost every decision that I've seen people make, when I'm not in an emotional state, if I'm emotional about it, it's like, you kill my mom not changing your brakes, you no brake changing motherfucker. Like, that's a different story. Right. But if I'm not in that state and I can do some critical thinking on the situation, I'm thinking, Ryan knew that he needed to change the brakes, but the truth of the matter is that changing brakes is not a pleasurable experience whatsoever. He probably had many more pleasurable experiences accessible to him. Mm-hmm. And I also know he would have changed the brakes if there had been, let's say, a brake changing delivery service that was $50, right? Oh, everybody would have their brakes on, spot on, change all the time. But we don't have that. That's not available. Ryan would have to gone to God knows what freaking place to waste all of his Saturday on that thing. And then finally have the brakes changed or whatever. I'm being exaggerated with it. But obviously, there are many deterrents against changing your brakes, right? And it's just not, if we want to live a pleasurable and happy life, changing the brakes is not a part of it. and you also simply lack the neurological condition to understand several steps ahead that could have caused something terrible to happen. I know about you also that if you would have known, if I don't change the brakes, I'm going to kill somebody, you would have changed the brakes.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like being sober that way, I can acknowledge that. And the other thing that I think is really interesting to point out in our justice system is once they put you in court for the manslaughter because you didn't change your brakes, let's say whatever sentence they give you, I don't know what sentences they give people for manslaughter, but let's say 10 years or something like that. Sounds severe, but 10 years. But then you go like, Your Honor, I have to confess something. It's like, what's going on? The end result is still the same, but you say, I wanted to kill that bitch, right? Like, I wanted to rear end them, and I'm happy that I killed them, right? You're going to get many more years for that. You know, that is murder.
Right, yeah.
The same result, same exact result, vehicular manslaughter, but now you said, I intended.
Yeah.
I was like, I want to do this, right? Completely different sentence you're going to get.
Yeah.
So as a society, there is something about that intention, that pre-planning, that will, that makes us go, that is some awful shit, even though the result is the exact same, right? The result is the exact same.
Yes, right. But like, what would you say the difference is, though? Because it's a very understandable difference, right?
Yeah, I think it's that we, like you said, that extrapolation.
Like, imagine releasing person A back into society after 10 years versus person B into society after 10 years, right?
That is perfectly understandable. That is understanding cause and effect. But I still don't think that is purely what we're thinking about when we sentence that person to 50 extra years in prison when they say, I did it intentionally, right?
Really?
Yeah. Let's say, for example, if you did it out of passion.
You're saying we don't usually think about like releasing them.
We do think about that. We do think about that, but I don't think that is the chief things. Like, hey guys, we need to make the logical.
We need to keep society safe.
Right.
It's more like get that guy.
Exactly. This is a horrible person. Get them out of the streets.
Yeah.
Death penalty, whatever it is.
Yeah, I see nothing wrong with that, but. Continue.
No. I'm not saying there is anything
okay.
wrong with that, but as a civilization, intention matters so much.
As a civilization, do you mean like as a species? This is pretty damn...
Right, this is everywhere.
Yeah.
This is kind of everywhere.
Yeah.
As a species, this matters to us so much.
Yeah.
Sure, because of the potential danger in future actions, but also because of the
I think we want to get even with them, right?
Yeah.
We want to make them suffer.
Yeah.
We want to get even. I'm all for getting even. It's kind of fine. I mean, we need to
getting even.
Yeah. Why the fuck, man? Why are we even having this conversation?
No, but I think it's
no. I'm joking. But like, obviously, we need to like take care of that intuition to get even. Because we can just do stupid shit with it. And this is one of the most extreme examples of that principle to me. If I am in the car with my mother, someone rear ends us, and my mother dies, this is where that principle is kind of most importantly relevant to me. That I not be trying to get even with that person behind me who didn't change their brakes as much as I want to. I need that, like, this is the hardest application of this principle, right? I need to put the blame where the blame is due. And unfortunately, in this situation, it's like, maybe 20% or something on the person behind me. And I'm probably going to need to restrain myself to put the blame where it's actually due, which is just this damn universe.
Yeah.
And so,
but how do you get even with the universe?
I know. Well, right. It would be easier to just kill the guy behind me, right? Yeah. And then that's the kind of thing we need to curb. We need to legislate. We need to say, and in my view, we need to not even punish manslaughter. While we're on the subject of that principle, that's where I see as the extreme, what we need to do example of the application of that. But yeah,
like blaming people too harshly for something once we know that they didn't intend to.
When we want to get even, that's the track we're on. Is one the intuition to want to get even. It's like we just said that we're fine with that in
in certain degrees.
Yeah.
But not completely unchecked, right?
Yeah. Yeah, there is.
And why do we even want to do that, right? That's kind of what we're asking right now, right? Like, what's the purpose of that intuition to like get that guy, get even, right?
Yeah. I honestly, it's so difficult for me to even have that because idealistically, I would be like, hey, let's think sober about this. He didn't intend to kill him.
Idealistically, exactly,
yeah,
right?
But there's no way I would.
No way.
Yeah. And the way that I explain that to me is like my gland at that instance is going to be more powerful than my frontal lobe. That's the way that I view it.
Imagine telling that guy to the car behind you.
Listen, my gland right now is telling me I need to assault you with this baseball bat.
Fear my gland.
Yeah, fear my gland. It's basically what that is. Your gland is going kill this guy.
True.
And every thought that you had changes. It's almost like this alternative personality.
No, here's what's crazy. Yeah, this alternative personality thing. I think that is very related. And one day, even not from a deterministic track, I think one day we're going to look into the brain with our fMRIs that are getting better and better or whatever, and we're going to be able to locate that. Like you're saying, whatever gland that is, I think we're going to sort of be able to see these two tracks of like, this gland has substantially taken over and is now doing the phenomenon that I was talking about earlier of choosing the wrong track, the track of more suffering. I do think most of the time when our gland is in that state, let's say, we had an awareness of a better track and so easily fall off of it that.
It looks like from the free will perspective, there is plenty of room to even consider what all of this is basically behavioral science. It seems like it. Like, because I think even everyone in the free will thing, if you believe in free will, it's kind of because you're trying to find something that makes you happy in life. And a sense of autonomy or a perception of autonomy.
I'd say chiefly, I am trying to make sense of why it seems like we have free will.
So I don't believe in a mind that is free of causation. And I think that pretty much every kind of neuroscientific research that we've ever done points to the fact that the brain is a kind of chain of causes.
Oh, you and your fancy science studies and knowledge.
For me, it was that really made me feel, it's like, dude, like I don't find it anywhere.
Yeah.
It's
well, that pardon me for saying, I think that's what gets most people when you look at. So, let's take some tribal society with nothing that we call science, right? Pulled their hand out of a fire still and might think to themselves, how many of my decisions are like that? They're kind of instinctual, subconscious, weren't really up to me. That's a little more of a mature thought. You're probably going to have that in your preteen or adulthood years.
Yeah.
And then in a Western society, you kind of have the mental capacity to consider that, determinism and stuff from about the same age. But you're being hit with, I think, more reason to think determinism in these societies too. Your studies, let's just say studies, that really seem to indicate it. And actually, there were times when there's like totally almost got me.
Yeah.
Where you look at a study, it looks like things are being determined before the person is aware of it, before the person indicates awareness of it. And that just usually seems like an open and shut case. That's why I think it's understandable. And again, I'll say to a little degree, valuable that we become aware of, all these factors that go into our decisions and stuff. But I think if you look really closely, you go, at the end of the day, there's still plenty of room for this being an autonomous decision.
For me, sometimes I think that the reason why we believe, and it sounds like the reason you chiefly believe in free will is because there is this conscious experience, which is pretty ineffable and just doesn't seem like even to be something like we can measure.
Can I slightly tweak that?
Go ahead.
So I would say that was the thing which drove my investigation or has driven my investigation most. I wouldn't say it's the thing that made me believe in it, but that's a very slight.
Okay. For me, consciousness was deconstructed prior to me not believing in free will, and that almost every aspect of sentience that we can appreciate and we can memorize as a tangible thing, you can dissect it to a point where you start wondering, where exactly am I in this picture? Mm-hmm. Where exactly is me in this whole consciousness thing? Mm-hmm. There's many, like we talk about that amygdala hijack, if you will. You also have thoughts that you battle with on a regular basis. You have different perceptions. You're not just an individual, you're a dividual. You are divided in many different ways, which makes sense neuroscientifically speaking, because your brain is just several neighborhoods of, networks, clusters of neurons kind of living their own lives and communicating. Some of them even, I think they're doing research into classifying some of our brain regions as even competitive, as in, I'm trying to use these resources, well, I'm trying to use these resources. Yeah. So what I see a lot is like, man, you can just grab consciousness and slice it down into so many little pieces where it's almost impossible to find where exactly you are in this whole thing.
Where is the seat of autonomous control in this? It's like all of these are kind of doing their own things.
Yeah. And not only are they all doing their own things, but they're kind of doing their own things based on things that are outside of what we would discern as control.
In every study or example that I've heard of that kind of goes like that makes it look like the brain is doing a bunch of things on its own. So where do you fall into that? Nearly always, I just find that there is plenty of room for still autonomy in there. And I know the general approach you're taking of like, when you look at these studies or something, it looks like there's no room for autonomy.
I think it's probably worth saying that my conclusion of this, and I think the conclusion of many determinists, is reached even prior to learning about studies that suggest a lack of control, because the implication is of those studies is, we're doing this prior to us being aware. The implication is awareness equals free will or control or choice. And from a determinist viewpoint, no, you could correlate any decision to being perfectly the end result of another activity that we call awareness. And for us, that awareness is in and of itself not free either. It's just something that we're feeling. There's many other feelings involved, just based on the fundamental function of the brain or how everything works in there. We consider even our feelings of awareness to have nothing to do with freedom. Even what we call control, if I say that control seems to be a narrative that just continues. I say I'm picking up this cup, I'm going to put it back down. In my brain, that's all, I did that. Mm-hmm. There is an I, which is a weird thing to even try to begin with, right? This is my arm. There's a conclusion of, I'm expecting it. There's a weird line that I draw because I'm saying I'm going to pick up this cup and put it back down, but I didn't say exactly what the time frame for that action was, what I expected from that action. There are so many different, if we were to like fine tune this thing, there is an infinity of detail that I simply had no awareness of, and I didn't feel that I had control over.
Okay, so this is really interesting because this relates to the subject of where is the cutoff for something being conscious versus subconscious. You know what I mean?
That ship of Theseus kind of thing where like...
yeah.
Pieces,
right.
Like where,
right. Where's the cutoff for things we call conscious or subconscious? Because it's obviously a spectrum. Yeah. Some things you're like very aware of, or I think, and probably neuroscience backs this up. I think that I've read that it has. You primarily focus on one thing, but kind of have peripheral focus on other things most of the time. And then maybe something that we call subconscious focus on like breathing or something. So where's the cutoff? What I tend to think when I look at any of these studies, as you dissect all of these processes, is that you can actually probably be having some level of conscious involvement with all of these things without even noticing it. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like, it's really the question of you pulling your hand away from the stove. How much was that you? And I'm really comfortable saying that to a large degree, whatever that is, it is you. You may not remember the reaction or the decision to pull away. It was so by instinctual, I mean so natural, so common sense. You know this reaction since you're a baby, and so you don't really remember it. It's like speaking a language. It's like what part of speech did you use just then? I don't know. I just use the words. It's so natural to me at this point that I don't really remember, but it's still you. I think it's important to look at a lot of these studies, and I think I know of like 3 really. And I tried to address the like foremost one I could find, the one that everybody says you want, the one that indicates determinism. It's that one. Yeah, that's the one that I featured in the video.
The one that says that there are signals that precede your awareness. Yeah, and you commit the action.
Right now. Well, and the way I broke it down in the video is you have like your intuitive sense of determinism. Like, what if the world, everything in the world, including my consciousness, works like math? Mm-hmm. My decision to pull my hand away from the fire. What if, that works in math, that works in physics. What if it works in biology and psychology also? Theoretically, that makes sense. That's the intuitive determinism, if you ask me, versus the like data-driven determinism. And I think, both of those can look like they harmonize. And I tried to say, here's my answer to that one, the intuitive one, and here's my answer to the data one, in as short and simple of examples as I kind of could.
When it comes to neuroscience, research, dude, there is so much involved.
It's so hairy.
There's a lot of correlation not equating to causation. Right. There is so much that needs to be studied that for me it's like I'm waiting for a definite conclusion in anything, and having a 1-to-1 ratio of like this happens and this happens.
That was specifically why I shied away from going more into quantum studies.
It's funny, my resolution on quantum is so simple.
Okay.
That is a God in the gaps thing. We still don't understand quantum mechanics well.
Yeah, so I mean, like, it could be. I do think both of our camps are of the gaps.
I have to disagree with that one.
Okay.
I have to disagree with that one. I think that free will hides more, or the lack of free will, the lack of belief in free will, there is no gaps in there, as in we are going by what is already found, and even some of the... Mm-hmm.
I think we might say, because we've made more progress in understanding from a deterministic point of view, that like if information is going to go any direction, it's got to only go more that way, right? Like
there's a sense of, again, sounds offensive, but like protagonism that seems to like it's needed. Oh,
Oh, well, I think that's fair. I think I do have that like. There's a common sense observation here. Yeah. It feels very fundamentally, and see, I think a lot of free will people might beat around the bush on this subject. There's kind of an intuition I'm trying to defend. Yeah. I'm like, man, why is there that little thing in there? Yeah. Let me try to, in giving it the benefit of the doubt, right? Let me try to do devil's advocate for that little thing as much as I can. Yeah. And when I did that, well, heck, it was actually the same thing that led me out of religion. Yeah. Was going, okay, I've been raised with this one view. Let me try to make every argument I can for the other side. And then I just realized how much easier that explained everything. Mm-hmm. And then I kind of have done the same thing with this free will. It's like there's this little thing that's nipping at me. It's causing me to really want to investigate it. What if I argue its side? And with free will, I found, of course this explains a lot more. It explains why I have the common sense idea of perception, of autonomy, consciousness, and in all the data that we do come across, there's still room for it in there. And even, I wouldn't even really expect this data to look any different given the assumption of free will. Yeah. Which, I mean...
there seems to be this thing, it's like, well, if I'm going to do this whole living thing, if I'm going to be alive, it's like, then I might as well attribute a certain amount of agency, value, whatever you want to call it, to me. Whereas in determinism, it's like there's actually none of that happening, but the illusion of it is important. But there's really none of it happening. It's almost like saying there isn't
important for what? Why is it important?
For our feelings, basically. It has an emotional effect.
So you said we attribute agency and value, I think.
Yeah. To ourselves.
By value, what do you mean?
Value, basically, it has a significance in life in general. Like my family.
You say potential to bring happiness.
You could say potential to bring happiness, or yeah. Let's say they bring a certain amount of happiness.
We're right about that. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's not like a.
But that's our emotions, though. You know.
Yeah.
And I don't consider our emotional priorities to dictate what, or like to be a good metric for what reality is, right? So emotionally.
I wouldn't say so either. Yeah.
Yeah. But emotionally, right? But emotionally sounds like we're saying like. You're like, hey, there's this thing, this extra thing that I feel outside of anything that we can express scientifically that seems to be closer to the truth about our reality, that we are conscious beings with agency, right? That we have free will. That seems to be an intuition that's closer to the truth than even what the scientific endeavor has.
Well, revealed. I don't think the scientific endeavor has really encroached on the theory of free will.
So in the sciences, in a place where I would argue in the sciences, there's almost really, as much as there is no space for soul, there's really no space for things like free will. I would argue it's like, how is an intuitive notion more accurate than the rigorous process of science?
So I think science will refine it's an asymptotic approach, I think is what it's called, where it gets closer and closer and closer and never arrives.
Okay.
In a sense, as much neuroscience as we've done, I kind of think our common sense is still the best tool that we've got for interacting with people, but we need to continue refining our knowledge of like the pressures that go into people's decisions, but also continue leaning into the knowledge that, yeah, you are directly responsible for some of your actions. It's also a pretty liberating idea. So you have the power to control a lot of your future. Maybe not all of it. I can't be a foot taller. But if I am depressed or something, there may be a good chance. I'm not saying we know for sure that it's up to you, but there may be a good chance that you can figure out a different motivation. You can look on the bright side or something. And then let's say from a deterministic view, it could still be the best option we have to tell someone, this is going to sound really insensitive, but to tell someone to suck it up. Mm-hmm. That could be the best option that we have on hand, or the best option that even exists anywhere, is to stimulate that part of the brain that feels like this is up to me. And okay, now I will start looking more on the bright side of things. And that may be how we're wired, to where like that is the best route to happiness. Say, rather than a pill, to use an extreme example.
Yeah. But a lot of this really seems to be based. I've taken everything that you said, and it's amazing. A lot of it really falls in a map that I'm very familiar with for arguments for free will. In that I'm thinking the primary thing here seems to be the definition of it as a necessity for a feeling that is, like you said, liberating, and perhaps even the perception that it's like it's going to be positive to empower people by telling them there is more that you can do in those circumstances that you have, whether it is a clinical condition or whatever else. And I don't think for example, in my position, I don't think our position would be to disempower people, saying it's like there's nothing you can do about your depression. If you cannot get any help, you're kind of SOL, right? I really don't think it's that at all. It's acknowledging everything that you can do and what may be logically easier. Sure, you can try to willpower yourself through something like depression, which I think neuroscientifically I don't know if that's even possible, but that's another argument. But it's like, sure, you can try to do that if there is no other method available, but just letting you know, we may come up with great solutions to such a condition. Because at the end of the day, the whole reason you're feeling it is because of a chemical imbalance. Something's going on that's causing that to happen.
And then here's, I would say, the other side of that coin. Let's take the tumor, for example. We would say the tumor is causing that that guy to feel that way. Is there anything about the guy's choices that are leading to the growth of the tumor?
Okay.
That's the other side of the coin, if that makes sense. Right. I'm obviously, we don't know, but like,
I would say absolutely not.
From my view, I would say, so not like they're sitting in their room meditating, grow a tumor right now.
No,
thinking grow a tumor, but it could be their choice of something that they're eating. But that's where I'm saying a lot of this can still boil down to the choice that you're doing. It's up to you. So you can kind of create these cycles. Mm-hmm. Say, I like unhealthy food. Well, I mean, I'm sure even quote unquote healthy food can give us these tumors and stuff. But I like a certain kind of food, and it turns out that's creating a tumor.
Yeah.
The tumor is causing me to feel a different way. I think we can get to the best root of the problem that we have by finding out what choice you're making and saying, okay, there's that behavior that we're going to need to curb. And the best way we have on hand right now is saying, you're going to have to essentially find it within you to eat a different kind of food. Mm-hmm. And we can motivate that with very, say, data-driven means. Say, we're going to find something similar to it. We're going to introduce you to a new kind of food that you didn't know you liked. And it's got to be something like that that would cause the tumor to eventually not even grow back. Now, that's a lot of...
just for the sake of clarifying to
sure,
anyone listening, of course, we are hypothesizing that the food is directly responsible
for
the growth of the tumor.
That's what I was about to say. That, like, that's for the things that are within your control. This tumor may completely not have been
genetic condition.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, and then how much can you change your genetics? I mean,
that's fine.
Or set up your following generations to have better genetics than you.
What I'm noticing is like there's a lot of, we really need to point there's huge value in attributing agency to people in any given situation.
I would absolutely agree with that.
Yeah. I think that
that could just be a big point of difference.
Yeah. I don't see, so it's not that I don't see any value. Agency feels great, right? Agency feels awesome. Appraisal for like, hey, I drew this picture. This was me, right? Like I grew the skill. I had the inspiration. Yeah.
Well, all these things. And you said feels great and seems to be feeling liberating too.
Yeah.
And in a lot, I remember asking Jacob, who's our therapist friend, and then also looking into it through other outlets. In a lot of therapy, they do try to cultivate a sense of like, you have control, right?
Yeah. So psychologically, I'm definitely giving it 100% the credit it needs. Agency feels great. I'm also thinking that we really need to keep track of everything that happens. That can.
This is where I take the both and approach, though. Yeah. Like, don't stop examining factors that are pressuring our decisions. Like we need to be looking around the room to say, is it hot in here? Why did I just run outside? Never stop doing that.
Exactly. I think that's a great point, because obviously there is the risk of like, that tumor was your fault. right?
Yeah,
that tumor was on you, and
which to be clear is not what I was trying to say with that example.
Right,
I mean, it's kind of like changing the brakes.
It could definitely sound like
it's like
it.
yes, okay. Let's clarify, right? Or not your intentional fault, right? Like you were eating the food, you had no idea it was correlated with that. You had no idea you lived in a radioactive neighborhood or something. Or your say if it is your genetics and then you had absolutely no control over it.
It's also how you slice the cake. Because the way that I see it is based on our intuitive knowledge of free will, take into consideration how in the secular and the religious world we attribute causation to people. I think that the vast majority of people would change their intuitive idea of free will if they had an understanding of fundamental neuroscience, right? Which is like we always give the example of a hot stove. You touch it. The real thing that happens is there is a lot of neurotransmitters that connect that thing to neighboring neurons in your brain. And then there is the action. But the action is not even a thought. That's just what it's wired to. If you were missing an arm, that thing wouldn't exist. But in your brain, you have busy clusters of neurons that are involved in so many different functions. And those guys get triggered whenever they're going to get triggered. It's kind of like, do you want to define that as you? Do you want to define that as, if it's outside of my awareness, and I don't know that certain brain regions are being triggered and that therefore that is causing certain thoughts to take place, how much am I okay with saying that is totally free will? That is still me. I'm not going to keep dividing that. And I think at the end of the day, and this is a very common thing in the debate in general, wherever you go, is where you're choosing to label your free will and where I'm choosing to label mine. I think maybe that's one of the biggest differences there. Because for me, what free will is supposed to be is sufficient logical reason to attribute culpability, to give me culpability, right? Or praise. And I feel that I don't have sufficient logical reason to do that, at all for any person. Now, I'm a human. I experience things. I will react to life accordingly. But just speaking purely of what we know, there seems to be no room for such a phenomenon as an acausal intention.
Yeah. Well, so I also think there are two things I want to say. One is to go back, but while we're on this point, I think the universe is an ironclad example of the acausalness. And like, what would it look like for me to be right? It would look like exactly what we see. It would look like a bunch of scientists going, oh, well, we don't know how this works with our models. It's like, how much information are we looking for to like, how much further back will we have to map out the universe to say, okay, somewhere back there, it can't map onto our notion of causality.
If we were to accept randomness in our universe, whatever that looks like.
Well, and so I actually prefer the word autonomy to randomness, because our perception feels like autonomy, right? We wouldn't say we make our choices randomly, but we are the sole determinant of the ultimate determinant of what the action is.
Yeah.
Randomness is sometimes attributed in the quantum field, like a particle randomly teleports or something.
Or outside of the universe, this kind of came out of nothing.
Yeah, so I think the difference between randomness and autonomy would probably have to be intent. I think we say intent for autonomy.
Yeah. And if I simply ask what caused the intent, where did the intent come from? What constitutes as you?
Your perception, your decisions.
Yeah.
Like you are literally a categorizing and decision making, action taking machine, right? We take in data, we categorize it, and then we kind of make decisions for what to do with that data. Yeah. That decision making is you.
Okay, that decision making is you. What, like at any given point, we have already seen how even our decision making can betray what we thought should have been best. It can betray our processing, right? So sometimes our processing escapes, I guess.
Can you give an example?
So, for example, the brake pads, right? You didn't want to do it, but you also weren't aware of everything that was going to go wrong. Or you may have been aware, but there was something in your processing portion of it that you were like, man, this went wrong, and not in a way that I wanted it to go wrong. And I think that even when we define the thing as you, we can also say that it is by no means a perfect process whatsoever. It seems like you can fine tune it. It seems like we can edit it.
Right.
It seems like we can do a lot with it. And accepting that, whenever you're talking about randomness in the universe, or like the universe is the ironclad version of like, we really don't understand causation very well. Outside of that, it seems when I'm saying that the scientific findings leave no room for free will, it's because within the accepted models of reality, there doesn't really seem to be any room for it.
Yeah.
At all.
So that model of reality is mapping a portion of our universe here,
where we fit perfectly.
Yeah. Yes, but we also fit perfectly with both. We have some elements of us, of what we call us, that are determined. Your skin. I can't choose to have different skin. And then you have some elements of you that are not determined. Both fit perfectly in our instantiation of space-time.
Right. I think that if we were to focus more on inside the mind, instead of, it's like, let's say we're all just brain, don't worry about the arms and other things, mm-hmm. or even the tumors. For me, the tumor is just a super extreme example of the main principle that is involved in consciousness for me, is many different processes creating different, like, I hate using the word illusion because it's a real experience, but let's say creating the illusion of, first of all, I am. I think that's an interesting illusion that comes as a result of these like functions inside the brain. And second, I will do this, So, okay, let me say what I think the tumor is analogous to. It's analogous to someone holding a gun up to you and saying, do something you don't want to do. Right. So then you do that thing to preserve your life and not get shot. Who did that? Right. So it's still accurate to say you did that. And it's still super valuable to see the pressures of that situation. Yeah. I see the tumor as the same. You're feeling so many more pressures than normal. And a lot of people can't see that. Of course, it's going to be valuable to look at the rest of the picture because we do make our decisions, at least most of the time, based off of pressures. So these external things, right? Like we might agree there. At the risk, I would interject that at the risk of being insufferably anal about this, it's like, okay, going back to the gun analogy, I'm thinking you're going to do the thing that you don't want because at some point there was a priority of your self-preservation, which is, it's directly correlated, and we have proven this, to certain parts of your brain that if you were to edit or remove, all of a sudden, no, I'm not going to do it. Shoot me. Or like whatever it is, right? I'm simply not going to do it. Or maybe you want to do it, but you lack the frontal lobe to be able to do the thing that the guy holding the gun is telling you to do. Or you lack the coherence to even go like, do what? Like there are so many different functions that whenever they work smoothly, we never really notice that they're there. They're just working. And like whenever they don't operate, they yield completely different results that are not our choices. So whenever they do operate optimally, whatever that is, for me, it follows the same exact principle. We call it optimally simply because the results are different, but it's still the same process. These functions individually, whatever organs are causing each individual thought, have causes behind them that we don't really have a control over. And those are the things that are determining whatever it is that we're in thinking about, if that makes sense. I think I follow that. So that you're basically saying the subconscious is responsible for a lot more than we attribute to it? I wouldn't even call it subconscious. It's more like, some of the most conscious thoughts that you have are in your cerebral cortex, which is still a really busy cluster of neurons, right? Like neurons everywhere. So if a function here isn't working properly, you will notice and say, something's going on that is not right. I cannot read numbers all of a sudden, for example. But let's say it's working quote unquote properly, right? Then we think this is working right. I have control over it. My argument is the function that makes you say I have control over it is no different from the function that makes you say something is wrong. The result is simply different. But ultimately, you still don't really have control over that function. It just feels like you do. It is coherent with everything else that you're feeling. But that function is just acting however it was going to act based on preceding causes. Same for the functions that make you recognize emotional value. Same for the functions that make you recognize this is something that I'm going to prioritize. Every little function that is involved, all the gears involved in us making a choice are working determined by something that we don't ultimately have control over.
So I think the analogy that might best fit like consciousness's interaction with the brain or something might be one of those, like an aqueduct.
Okay.
And I was gonna say one of those children's toy things that it's like you put the boat on one end, and it goes down the water and has some obstacles along the way.
Yeah.
And you're gonna see which route it takes, and that's kind of fun. The water is the consciousness, and then the brain is the structure.
Okay.
So, yes,
I agree with that.
So the brain is what either allows or prohibits the consciousness from flowing.
Mm-hmm.
When the brain gets completely cut off, when that water gets completely shut off by a dam or something, the person is dead, right?
Okay.
Like the consciousness is no longer possible.
Are we accepting in this analogy that the shape of the aqueduct pretty much dictates the stream of the water? It doesn't make the water flow, but it pretty much...
In the analogy of, in the case of the water in the aqueduct, yes. In the case of the human mind, no.
Okay, why not?
So long as there's any measurable amount of like room for the water to pass through, in the case of the mind, there's room for deviation for the mind to choose within those options. So let's say there are three. No, let's just say a gate is all the way open along this aqueduct.
Yeah.
The mind, the water in this scenario can choose 100% of options. It can choose from here to here.
The options available in the aqueduct.
Yes.
Right.
So even if you narrow those, you still have infinity options.
Yeah.
So that's why water probably doesn't have that choice. The mind does have the choice of which way to go through those given options.
In any given circumstance in this consciousness aqueduct where you can choose an infinity of options, why are you finally choosing one option? What is it that dictates that choice?
Right. So that is you.
Okay.
So
the thing that makes it, I'm going to go this way or that way.
Your perception. And when, this was a ref's contention. What's the word?
Contention.
With, and Das's contention, I believe, with this wording. People go, what determines your choices, right? It's kind of analogous to what you're saying, right? What was your wording exactly, I think?
I think it's like, why is it... So you're calling it you, the thing that is dictating that final choice in the one, in the infinity between, that the aqueduct is allowing you to do, right? In other words, in the set parameters, what makes you choose anything?
Right.
You're saying that's what you is.
Yeah, that's it. So what makes you choose the route that you chose?
Yeah.
It is if you perceived it, in general, it's if you perceived it to be your best route to happiness.
Right.
Okay. Now we have the ability to deviate from that. We can autonomously look at another track and say, I'm going to choose that one. But you autonomously perceive your options and choose the option that to you, to your perception, seemed like the best route.
Okay.
So,
and that perception is what I'm thinking is even in this analogy, all of that has a function that dictates that choice. So maybe this is a very important premise we need to agree on. Are we in agreement that the brain is what causes the mind?
No.
Okay. Yeah. The mind causes the brain?
Well, I mean, so I don't think that's resolved. Okay. There may be a symbiosis. The mind might cause the brain. The brain might cause the mind. One doesn't seem possible without the other.
So, and not to sound, I don't know, whatever. I feel that I have more data that corroborates my position that it is the brain that causes the mind. What do you feel supports that position that you have that the mind causes the brain?
I think so from my view, most research said to indicate determinism is kind of like water off a duck's back. It hasn't encroached on the concept of free will. Let's see, what would it look like for the mind to cause the brain?
Maybe this is a gross version, but I would say, I'm depressed. Let's now think of a way in which I am not depressed. And mentally you start changing your neurochemistry.
Okay. I thought you meant even like the origination of the brain, like in utero.
Well, let's accept that the brain is here already. Obviously, maybe we could say there is already a preset process where your cells will reproduce and create the whole you.
Actually, remember when I said I was going to talk about two things and one was related to what we're talking about now and the other one was going to be to go back? Mm-hmm. This is actually what I was going to talk about. The mind causing the brain.
Okay.
I don't think it's something that we will find, you could put it under an fMRI and locate. Unless you say that's kind of most of what you're seeing, if not all of what you're seeing when you look at an fMRI, is the mind causing the brain. Mm-hmm. Will you be able to point to it? No. I do think that there's enough reason to think, and I don't think this is resolved, but I think there's enough reason to think that you essentially can change your own chemistry in your mind, right? We don't understand everything about the mind, so we can't say for sure whether these changes we see in the mind, a dump of serotonin. Say you think a happy thought, your brain dumps dopamine or serotonin. Was that your mind causing that, or your brain causing the mind? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah. What led to the happy thought?
Yeah. What led to the happy thought? You could say your desire to.
But what led to the desire to think a happier thought?
So you could say because you were in a depressed condition or something, right? You were in a depressed condition, and then you wanted to improve your mental state. I'm not sure if our desires are up to us, but it seems like the route to take to achieve them is.
I would say neither is. So you can really dissect you're depressed or whatever. Okay, for even a happy thought to try to be formulated in your head, you have to have a good function of memory to operate, to go, I remember what a happy thought looks like. Let me recreate it. You have to have the neurological ability to do that, to form images in your head or coherent thoughts in your head that then you perceive, which is another thing that you need to have the ability to have in order to do that. The whole chain reaction of that is going to be found in, let's say, this depression has accumulated enough negative thoughts or enough unpleasant thoughts, whatever the opposite of pleasure is in our brains, whatever that looks like hormonally. And then that creates the impetus for all these other neurons, which to me, it could be analogous to gears in a machine to start spinning. And then, boom, you get the final end result. But none of that process, the whole process of let's think happy thoughts, would have ever existed if it wasn't because of this chain reaction that we ultimately didn't have any control of.
I think what you just said is you're not in control of having started at point A.
Nor are you really in control of the entire sequence. But as in, you're not gonna stop it. You know what I mean?
But you are capable of choosing what to do from point A to point B.
And the question is, how does that choice happen?
Right. So you perceive your current state. I'm at point A. This is a point of discomfort.
Yeah.
I want to get to a point of comfort.
Yeah.
How should I do that? It's going to depend on my perception and then my interpretation of that data as to what I think is the best route to get there. And that is autonomous. That part is autonomous.
I think that each one of those functions is tied to a process in the brain that is constantly running. And you finding yourself, like you said, in that stream in the aqueduct is not up to you. Like where the boat is going to be in the aqueduct, if we call that consciousness, is ultimately always going to, like he's always going to be moving. We're always going to, you can never really shut off your thoughts unless you're in some weird doze-off state. Right. You're always going to be moving. So how those little train tracks or the aqueduct changes, it's not up to you. That's something that's going to be happening as you live. And also even the boat taking any particular way, it's all down to, you know, the tiny little influences in the stream that eventually end up determining the boat. And the mind pretty much shows us all the evidence that it works precisely that way. It is so many functions are found in the brain that are dictating this particular experience that we're having. And each one of those things gets caused by something else that happened. And then we find ourselves there, you know, then we have the memory of it, then we can perceive our memories of it, which is normally what I feel we call awareness. And then that leads to all these other things that are happening. Every time we're having a thought, such a busy thing that's happening in the brain. You know, there's neurons communicating with each other. Some of them are growing. Some of them are starting to get put away because they're not as activated anymore. And little by little, as the years go by, that starts shaping everything that we call a mind. And none of that, at no point can I find something that goes, there was an acausal experience that went, let's create this thing, or let's have this experience that then changes everything else.
Yeah, to me, this is still tearing apart the radio to look for the signal. You can understand the, say, physical, even though, you know, a signal, but the physical part of the radio, the metal part of the radio, for eternity. You can continue understanding that forever. What you're not going to find is the signal.
Which to me is an analogy that fits better with what consciousness is. Which I agree that consciousness is a weird thing that we still don't really have. We don't know why it happens, right? We don't know why it emerges, but what we know is that it emerges.
Yeah. And I think what you're looking for, you said, is autonomy, right?
Right, I'm looking for the free will.
And that's why I'm saying I just highly doubt, like, it fits under the free will model that you'll never see it.
Because it is an emergent property that takes many parts?
It influences material. Like, so you're not going to see, oh, that neuron moved on its own, there's the autonomy. So I think it's like if you zoom out further from neurons, say I raise my hand and then lower my hand, and say, oh, I saw your muscles move, that caused it. Okay, well, you can zoom in a little further and say, okay, oh, there's a brain here that that was correlated slightly before. So it was really the brain that caused it. Zoom in even further, a little neuron that was doing something before the brain lobe lit up.
Yeah.
And you say, oh no, it's not the arm, it's not the brain, it's not the muscles, it's the neuron. You can keep zooming in.
Which was lit up by something else.
Yeah, and like, I just don't ever expect us to find the thing. It makes sense that it would be autonomous, and that it's not like you're going to see an arm move totally detached from a body or something. Like, that's not what we're claiming you're going to be able to find.
Yeah.
And it's not like you're going to see the brain light up completely autonomous from neurons. Keep zooming in, keep zooming in, keep zooming in. This is the Sapolsky challenge. Is it show me a neuron that, you know, moves entirely uncaused or whatever.
Okay.
I was like, that wouldn't even prove free will if we did find it.
I understand that, because it seems like free will is more it's almost like larger than just one neuron. Is that fair to say?
Well, I don't know what you mean by that.
As in, you're not. It's almost like if you point at the brain, it's like, where is consciousness? is almost asking the same thing. It's like you're not going to point at one place and say that's what consciousness is.
Yeah,
there's so many. There's so many things that happen in consciousness that is difficult to just go, that's where it is.
Just imagine what that would look like. That would what the hell would that look like? That you said, there's the thought that you're thinking right now.
Yeah.
That doesn't even make sense as like, we can't imagine what that study would look like to say, there's the thought. We can say there's the thing which happened at the same time that somebody said they had a thought. Yeah. Are we ever going to be able to point to something and say that's the thought?
Which to me, the example that I've always used for that is a car's parts versus speed. The final speed that it has. Show me in this car where the 100 miles per hour is achieved.
Yeah.
Like what? There is obviously so many things, both external and internal to the car's components, that achieve that final thing. Yeah. However, to me, speed is not a causal. Well, it doesn't come magically out of nowhere. The car has to cause it ultimately, and all evidence points to the fact that the car does it. But obviously, we're not going to find the speed.
Okay, and then let's run with that analogy. Mm-hmm. So the car causes the speed. Let's say the brain causes the consciousness. Yeah. I'm actually fine with that.
Okay.
I don't think it's resolved, but it's like, does matter cause dark matter?
Okay.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
And so in whatever field that, look, let's just lay the first layer of this and say that, like, it's weird to imagine what it would look like to point to something and go, there's a thought. Like, that doesn't compute easily.
No.
Maybe one day we can map it out better. It's a pretty different kind of field of existence. We can't imagine how far in you would have to zoom for that question to really make sense. So it exists in a pretty different, I'm just going to say plane of existence, in a different field. Quantum field, dark matter and dark energy. Mm-hmm. I think it's something like that. That has an effect, but we won't really be able to directly observe it.
Yeah.
And maybe like dark matter or dark energy, it's kind of in a balance dependent relationship with matter.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure which one gives rise to the other one. But let's say it is the brain, and I probably default have this view anyways, that the brain gives rise to consciousness. Or it's like once the aqueduct is assembled,
right,
now you can open the gate and consciousness can come through or something like that.
Yeah.
That doesn't negate the autonomy of the consciousness in this analogy. So you could still have it like the brain is a requirement for consciousness, and the consciousness is still makes autonomous decisions.
Let's say that the brain, let's even accept the hypothetical that consciousness is like that interdimensional thing that the brain simply happens to be tuning into, right? It's like it's in another realm, but the brain is what we used to access.
The brain is a catalyst between
the radio to the signal.
Right.
But what free will sounds to me is the signal can actually change the radio.
I think that's possible. Yes.
Okay.
So and like I don't know enough about radio. But maybe the signal does change whatever its catalyst is a little bit. Maybe not a lot.
Mm-hmm.
My view is you can probably change your brain a lot. Most of the time it's like the water erodes the aqueduct or something, and then imagine it's choosing to erode the aqueduct. So it can change the brain, and it can even like through sheer willpower grow a gate on this side of the aqueduct and say, because I view the left side as the better, more direct side to go down, I'm going to completely shut off the right side. And that decision to do that is completely up to, I mean, a lot of this is kind of just restating the same thing on my side. I think it's kind of a tautology of that process is autonomous.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say that.
Yeah,
I think it has to be frustrating.
Well, no, and I'm hearing it again because I'm trying to like, what am I missing, or what is it about me? Like, where's my understanding? What I'm constantly thinking is like, none of that seems like a causal process at all. All of it, the existence of the aqueduct, to the flow of the water, to the creation of the gate.
That's why I say in the analogy of the aqueduct, because you probably don't have autonomy with water. Right. That's where the analogy would break down a bit. Because I would say the water is autonomous in the analogy of the brain and consciousness.
Yeah. It is found basically everywhere in nature. Then an emergent property that should be measured different from how you measured what causes the emergent property affects the thing that is causing it. So, for example, speed will actually affect the function of a car, even though the car is what caused speed to take place. The aqueduct is going to affect the water is going to affect the aqueduct. So to me, it's perfectly fitting that the emergent property of the mind that is based on everything I've seen, 100% caused by the physical processes in the brain, eventually cause other physical states in the brain to change. You know, it's like, for me, it's the chain of dominoes.
Right. Falling back on itself, kind of.
Functioning exactly how I think they should function.
Yeah.
Like this.
We both look at this and go, yeah, it looks exactly what you would expect.
I think we reached a state where, since we're viewing the same line of dominoes and evaluating it differently, and also the fact that we're almost at 3 hours here, I think it's like, maybe we can now go to the
common ground a little bit more.
I think we may have to revisit this for sure at some point. So I think that we're both in agreement that at the end of the day, like, what we want to prioritize to is like, everybody, let's get on the way to happiness.
Yeah, right. Let's define happiness a little bit better, and let's definitely try to identify the things that we think are inhibiting that, or the things that are good routes to.
And I think that we both identify that an essential part of happiness is, let's say, understanding how to prevent negative outcomes from happening instead of retaliating against negative outcomes.
So we both have some like things that we think are maybe some pitfalls of the other side. The other side is maybe more, what's a risk we see of the other side, so that we can come back and say, but the common ground ought to get us close enough to where we don't have to worry about this risk, hopefully. Yeah. This begins the common ground conversation that until we know everything about the universe from a deterministic point of view, we're still going to punish people directly. Until we can understand everything that caused everything, we have to punish something. I want to get to that point where I can understand everything that perfectly and just like snap my fingers, and because I understand this universe so well, and go to the root cause of all of our problems. That is the end goal of determinism. You know, I want to understand everything so well that I can just snap my fingers and essentially be happy.
Yeah.
And that's a good goal. Like, I essentially am always for continuing along that goal, even believing that answer probably won't lie in scientifically mapping out everything. From my view, we can increase, and we should increase. Even with the belief that everything is determined, we still have to put individuals behind bars because it's our best solution for now, right? From a free will point of view, understanding as much as we can of the pressures that went into someone's decision making also benefits our happiness. We are able to treat each other more equitably, right? We have a better understanding of psychology. And so it's a valuable pursuit to understand as much as we can. And even from the free will side, we're still going to have to put people behind bars and say, look, man, I don't know what all is causing this right now, but it needs to stop. That kind of thing. Yeah. With the kind of understanding that should get the job done. That should get the idea across, and they should be able to go, okay, I'll stop this action, which is wild. But that's where I think both the deterministic camp and the free will camp, practically end up having to do the same thing. balancing how much you're trying to understand of the person's decision making and just putting the responsibility kind of on them at the end of the day, or at least punishing or restraining them individually and telling them to stop, you know?
Yeah, I see a lot of benefit in, you know, obviously linguistically I refer to it to accepting the illusion of autonomy and free will, right? And it's like, let's at least, it's almost like to me, it's like, let's keep accepting that delusion because it affects us emotionally, you know? You know, as much as I say everything about determinism, it's amazing to see how many people will say it's like, dude, like this is not something that I can reconcile in my mind. I cannot live happily with this idea. I don't know why that happens to them. Obviously, to me, the complete opposite was happening, where the idea of there not being free will was more of a relief, probably because it simply made me more pragmatic as a person. I'm not sure. But I think I have an appreciation towards, I'm going to use the word material, a more material approach also to our human condition than a metaphysical approach to our human condition, because I feel the risk of a metaphysical one is that then we are putting more burden on people than we should. But I'm also a believer that it's important to have a sense that something here is sacred. Something in the brain is sacred. The reason I say that is because I see it as an inevitability that as scientific progress increases, scientific process, whatever, the knowledge of the brain increases, and we know, hey, when you press this little button, switch this little gear, turn this little knob, this person behaves completely different, you know, whatever's going on there. I think everyone can agree that that is a fact based on what pharmaceuticals can do to us.
Well, can I say that's almost like the pebble in the shoe of the free will side, kind of like maybe the common sense intuition that we have free will is kind of a pebble in the shoe of the deterministic side. It's like we both have like, it was a pebble in my shoe. If I'm like trying to put on the shoe of determinism, see how well it fits. This thing that I'm feeling is like, I don't see where this experience comes from. Personally, I don't see where this experience comes from. I can hypothesize that the brain generates it. It seems to be super correlated with the brain, but we still haven't found it. What makes sense of this, right? Felt like a pebble to me. What also feels like kind of a pebble to me is the tumor or the
pharmaceuticals.
Yes, right. The switch you can flip to make someone act completely differently.
Yeah. I think that regardless of the philosophical appreciation there, it's like it's a fact that can happen.
Right.
And to me, it's
like these are phenomenons from both of our side that are like super worth exploring.
Yes. And especially living in a civilization that approaches more and like we're seeing the effects of what happens when a few humans have an excessive amount of control over other humans. For me, it's like if we as a civilization appreciate that everyone's brain is we need to respect it as a private chamber that, you know, we all need to contribute towards his happiness. Like we can't just trespass that boundary. You know, being a materialist, you would imagine it's like, well, you don't really believe in anything being sacred or anything like that. It's like, yes, but within the paradigm that we...
Yeah, I mean, like if happiness means anything, it basically means sacred.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah, in this philosophy, and I'm glad we both share it already, it's like, say whatever else you want, we all believe happiness exists and that it's the ultimate goal.
Yeah.
What is the goal from a deterministic point of view? Goal of all of your actions, happiness. Would you say? Yeah. And like, why?
There is really no logical reason other than that's what I feel because I'm a person and that's what I agree to. You know?
So would you even say there's a sensible answer for like, what makes happiness something you like should pursue?
I think it's simply because it's how I'm wired. It's naturally, by definition, you're going to pursue pleasurable experiences, right?
Do you think there is room for people not? No, I think think I know how you're going to answer that already. You say naturally, you're going to choose pleasurable experiences.
Yeah.
Can you identify if somebody is like naturally choosing unpleasurable experiences?
Well, at the end of the day, we would always find the root cause to be that's what they thought was the best thing to do. Let's say a person hates themselves and they think I'm the worst and they start cutting themselves as a form of punishment. Well, you're doing that punishment because you agree that you're not reaching an ultimate standard that should be good. So you're punishing yourself because you're not in a good place, which means by implication you want to pursue that good place. That's where you want to be.
Yeah, I think that is a big point of agreement. I have the asterisk of being able to consciously, intentionally choose the route of suffering.
Yeah.
But most of our actions and our best nature leads to something which we actually all recognize as the path which brings us the most happiness, the route which brings us the most happiness. People use the counterexample of exercising, right? But I think it's crazy. Same thing with self-sacrifice. That's just nope. You are still choosing your best route that you have available to you.
Like at the end, you're still just going for something that you acknowledge to be the most optimal state of being, based on the dichotomy of pleasure and pain. Like at the end of the day, that's the best thing to be.
And another major point of agreement, and something that's been said a few times within the Axiom videos, is that, and I very firmly believe this, that our sensations of pleasure and pain are not 100% up to us. And that's where I was saying I take a more middle approach. I'm not 100% everything is up to you with free will. And it maybe we can kind of accidentally kick our free will into overdrive and like be affecting more than it should be. Like if I'm ignoring pain, I can autonomously ignore pain, but then it will lead to more suffering or something. So it's like your free will is kind of like bending the meter further than it's supposed to go.
Yeah.
And so the appropriate place is to kind of balance your ability to direct this water with the aqueduct's natural parameters of where the water can go.
Yeah.
And I think you're about to say that fits perfectly under a deterministic view.
Not necessarily. I was going to add another example that maybe it's a little bit riskier, but the other extreme is the one that we found in religious contexts, where people say no matter how bad the temptation is, you can always resist it. No matter how strong the temptation is to do sin, you can always resist it.
I kind of want to leave like the subject of how religions handle this subject on the shelf, because they've got so many other like doctrines that it's tied to that are just so bad that yes, they're gonna abuse that.
And it's not to go on a tangent on religions, but that is an example of how you could say an overwhelming amount. It's like, hey, like if there is a temptation, in other words, like, man, there's this thing that I want to do, I really want to do it, and I know that I shouldn't. Like, maybe you need to strategize. Maybe you shouldn't put yourself in the battle of trying to resist it. One example is addiction. If I love heroin and oh my gosh, it's like I need it, like maybe you shouldn't put a needle of heroin in my house.
Yeah, maybe stop hanging out with those guys.
Stop hanging out with people that give you heroin. Don't walk down the street where there's heroin.
Right.
Like, don't think that you can survive that battle.
Right. And so that's where I'm drawing attention to, like, look, if you prick your finger on a thorn bush and it makes you uncomfortable, that's not up to you.
Right.
At least some amount.
Yeah.
And everybody that I have said that to, whether free will, deterministic, or whatever, everybody goes, yeah, at least some amount, your feelings are not up to you. You can't 100% control your experiences. And therein lies the common ground to me. that we need to understand all of the things that cause us pain inherently. We need to not be trying to ignore these things, and we need to actually be optimizing our environments.
Yeah.
And so I think there's the common ground, and it's significant.
The optimizing our environments to me is like, that is the cream. Like, that is to me like, please, let's try to do that.
Yeah.
Instead of whatever fucking raw dogging shit we're trying right now.
Yeah. Well, like, and that I think is where I might take a more moderate approach with free will. It's like, we need to be minimizing whatever raw dogging we're doing, so that we can literally just be floating down this experience of paradise, and we don't even have to snap our fingers to get what we want. Yeah. If that's possible, we need to be moving toward that. Yeah. And we do have what we believe is measurable, data-driven progress toward that end.
So far. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, we are also capable of taking steps backwards.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
not that we're talking about politics already.
No. That's what I hope. I hope that we keep intuitively understanding, hey man, there's nothing wrong with making things easier for you. Because easier means now you have more time to do some other cool things.
Oh man, and it's fundamental to like my concept of happiness that it is easy. It is the easiest option. You don't have to work for it. You don't have to try. It is the path of least resistance. Yeah. The water flows perfectly, right?
It's such a strange conclusion to this one. It's almost like, it's like the answer seems to be, let's pretend that both are real. Like both disagreeing parties on free will and determinism, it's like, we're going to be happiest if we pretend that the other option is real.
Yeah, because I argue for trying to maximize your understanding of what causes things.
Yeah. And I'm arguing for people to respect the sacredcy of the feeling
of autonomy.
Yeah, that's like right. don't fuck with it, because once we start, it's gonna be hell from then.
Yeah.
Like for
that's
me,
super interesting. Well, thanks to everyone for listening. Again, we're going to try to find more ways of making this a little bit more of a collaborative discussion, and opening up ways of including more people in it. So I think that's going to wrap it up for today. See you all next time.
God bless you all. Bye.